Robert Mnookin is the director of the Harvard Negotiation Research Project. He's the author of Bargaining with the Devil, When to Negotiate, When to Fight. Joins me now. You were listening there to Becky. What stands out to you as a seasoned negotiator? What stands out to you as being a pinch point or a pain, something to worry about?
Well, I think what complicates these negotiations enormously, and they always do in hostage negotiations, is that there's a great deal of distrust on both sides, in fact. What worries me in the short run, although I'm guardedly optimistic, is that on the one hand, the Israeli army has a lot of command and control top down. And I'm quite confident, there's not going to be any bombing during the 4-day period. And the orders on the ground are going to be no affirmative military action. But on the other hand, the other side is much more decentralized. And as a consequence, there could be some freelancers that really do cause problems because they may want to break it up.
But that's when that hotline back to Doha will become essential because you do want to distinguish between a freelancer who's just having a bash versus a systemic breach of the truce agreement.
Well, I think that, you see, will the Israelis believe that it's just a freelancer? Or could they think that, in fact, it's part of the Hamas strategy? I don't know, but I think that's the risk. And how do you confirm from Doha who it is? Not so easy.
Now, let's assume, for the purposes of the question, that the 4 days go okay, and we get into a 5th day, and Hamas does start to release more hostages to gain these extra days. But eventually, you do get down to a number of hostages that Hamas will be holding that they can't release because that's their leverage gone. Now, you and I can discuss whether that's 10, 20, 30, 40. They've got so many. But there will be a number that they will not be prepared to release because that's leverage.
I agree with you. I think that it's very unlikely that through negotiations, Hamas is going to release all the hostages. Moreover, what's clear is that the Israeli government's war aims remain to defeat Hamas entirely and remove it from power in Gaza.
And that, of course, is I suppose it is a contradiction to the idea of bringing all the hostages home. From your knowledge and your understanding and negotiations, the complexity here and the lack of trust. But, hats off to the Qataris. They've managed, I won't say they've brought it all the way home because we're not there yet, but they've got it just about over the line.
Well, they've made real progress with respect to the hostages. I don't think there's been any progress with respect to the underlying conflict. And that's the dilemma, of course. I suspect in the intermediate run, Israel will have the capacity to, in fact, defeat Hamas. What that means, however, in terms of the day after, as everybody's discussed, is a real problem.
But how do you know when you've defeated them? I mean, Israel's already said, let's take the various hospitals that have been the source of Israeli activity, where Hamas has continued to fire from inside or nearby out. Israel says, well, Hamas, you can always surrender. You're worried about these hospitals and you're worried about the patients. Put up the white flag and it'll all be over.
Well, I think that, in fact, you'll know it when, in fact, there are no more Hamas soldiers fighting. And I think that, in fact, you'll know it probably when the Israelis have been able to destroy a substantial part of these tunnels that have permitted them to operate. On the other hand, what remains the question, of course, which I think you put very well, is when that day comes, what's going to be the governance structure in Gaza? The Israelis may end up reoccupying Gaza, but in fact, for them, that's a terrible choice.
All right, here's the question you can plead the fifth on. Your book is called Bargaining with the Devil, When to Negotiate, When to Fight. Bearing in mind the events of October the 7th, the massacre of Israelis, but knowing that there's 200 odd hostages, was this a moment to negotiate, or should they continue to fight when it's over?
Well, I think they're doing both. And I think what's clear is that for the sake of the hostages, the Israeli government is not presently inclined at all to give up the fight against Hamas.
I'm grateful, sir.
And I think that one consequence of that, as you say, is from Hamas's perspective, they're not going to give up all the hostages.
Robert Mnookin, I'm grateful. I apologize, sir. I thought you'd finished the previous sentence. I'm grateful that you joined us tonight. Thank you.